Raider Nation, this is Amy Trask, and you are listening to the Black Hole Banter Podcast with James Arcelana and Q. Just win, baby.
The autumn wind is a pirate, blustering in from sea. With a rollicking song he sweeps along, swaggering boisterously. The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won.
Raider Nation, let's go, let's go. Raider Nation, let's go, let's go. Raider Nation, are you ready for some football? You ain't ready for no football. You ain't ready for the Oakland Raiders. It's the invasion of the Oakland Raiders. Are you ready for some football? Yeah. You ain't ready for this football.
What up, Raider Nation? Welcome to another edition of the Black Hole Banter Podcast. This is James Arcelana. As always, I am here with your boy Q. Say what's up, man.
What up, Raider Nation? We are back, and the preseason is over, baby. That's right. That's what I'm talking about. We are staring the regular season right in the face, and I couldn't be happier about it. So, yeah, man, glad to be back here with you.
Yes, sir. Took a while, as the offseason always does, but we are here. Ladies and gentlemen, the NFL plays its first game of the 2019 regular season tomorrow. Of course, the Raiders don't play until Monday, but nonetheless, I am hyped because the offseason over, football is here, and I am ready for it. But before we can get to that, we do have to talk about a little more offseason stuff, and that's because the final episode of Hard Knocks was last night. So we're going to talk about it, as we always have, but we're not going to spend a ton of time on it because we are ready to move on with the season, and I believe the rest of you are as well. Last week on the podcast, I said that every episode was my favorite because every new episode was new content, and I got hyped about it. And so, every week I was like, yeah, this is the best one. Yeah, this is the best one. And Q made a joke about me being the fish who gets caught first because I'm always biting at the bait. Well, this week I didn't get caught because I thought this episode was kind of boring, man. What did you think?
Yeah, it was nothing. It was nothing at all to do with. It was just another episode. It almost felt like when you do a radio show and you do 5 days a week, and then like on maybe Wednesday or Thursday, you just kind of do a throwaway show. That show, that Hard Knocks show, that final edition, kind of felt like a throwaway. It's just kind of like, okay, ho-hum, we're going to show them this, we're going to show them that, we're going to do a little here, a little do that. But it was nothing major. It was no big storylines that I saw. It was nothing that we didn't already know as far as cuts go because the cuts had already happened, so we already knew the roster. We already knew who was going to get cut. So it really wasn't a whole lot of anything. Seeing John Gruden on the way to the facility early in the morning listening to Metallica, that's not a big deal. There was really not a whole lot of anything that that show excited me about. Really, the only thing I really appreciated and really liked was seeing Al Davis's office, and that was really it. Al Davis's office I thought was cool, seeing that it was still in the same
and
condition.
They didn't even show enough of that.
Right, that's true, because they said it was in the same condition, how it is today as it was when he passed, but we don't know that. We weren't there. So as far as I know, they wrote up some plays on the board and made it look like that. I don't know. So, it looked cool to see his office, but you're right. They didn't even show enough of that. So, episode number 5, I'm just glad Hard Knocks is over. That's all really I am. I'm just glad it's over because episode 2 was my peak. I was very high on episode number 2, and it just kind of leveled out after that for me.
Yeah, so I don't think we need to I don't think we need to say much more about last night's episode. I think all in all, as Raiders fans, we all appreciate having Hard Knocks there and being able to see a little bit more Raiders content than we normally get. But you're right. You nailed it with everything. There was no surprises. We knew about everyone who was getting cut. There wasn't anything exciting or interesting that happened in the episode. It really kind of felt like they were like, well, we got to do one more, so let's just get a bunch of footage up there of a couple guys we talked about already, like Luke Wilson and Jason Kambinda and Keelan Doss, and then just round it out with none of them making the roster, and that's about it. So again, we already knew none of those guys made the roster. We already gone through the surprise of Keelan Doss not making it. I would say it was a little tough watching Jason Kambinda get cut because of all the involvement with his mom, but I will say it was also the one thing that I did find cool about the episode, and it was really the only one thing, was the scene of Kambinda basically still on the premises with his box, getting ready to get in the car, and he's already know he's going to be playing for the Lions. So I thought that was kind of cool because it did show you how, for these guys who are the bubble guys, the guys who are right on the edge of that roster, man, their lives are crazy. You know what I mean? That's wild. This dude just got cut, and he's already talking about how he needs to go home and pack because he needs to fly to Detroit today because he got signed by Detroit, and he needs to just switch up his entire life. And now he's living in Detroit, but maybe he's never even been there before, and it all just happened like that. You know what I mean? So that was the one thing that I thought this episode did bring, but it was, all of 30 seconds or something, That and the Al Davis office, I agree. I thought Al Davis office was cool, obviously, but again, they just showed a very short amount of it. So all in all, very disappointing episode. Don't think there was really much noteworthy about it, other than the fact that it being over means preseason is over and the regular season is here. So let's talk about the regular season.
Yeah, let's do that.
I tweeted earlier today, I don't know what to make of this team. I feel like last year's was a wash, okay? There was so much weird about it, from the fact that it was a new head coach with a GM that he clearly didn't get along with, to the fact that they traded the best player on the team days before the season started, to the fact that they fired the GM midseason. It was just a crazy, weird season, so I don't know how much you can really take from that in terms of looking at that to decide what you're going to see this season. What do you think?
Well, it's funny, man. You look at the roster and you look at the roster on paper. You look at them throughout training camp, preseason. You just kind of look at the body language of the team and you realize, look, this team is way more talented than the team was in 2018. I think that the team has eliminated a lot of the distractions that they had in 2018, even though some will claim and fire off that AB is nothing but a distraction. But I think the way that the Raiders are playing it with Mike Mayock and John Gruden, good cop, bad cop, I think that they're doing it perfectly. So I really don't think that AB is a distraction at all, even with his latest shenanigans and the little Instagram picture of his fine. Like, who cares? Whatever. I think, like I said, Mike Mayock is playing a good job as the bad cop, and John Gruden's doing a hell of a job as the good cop. So I think that all works out in the wash. So they're more talented, but they're very young. They go from being the oldest team in the league to being the 9th youngest team in the league. So, it's a huge difference, and you're asking a lot of young guys to be good, and you're asking them to be good really, really quickly. You're asking them to become professionals really, really quickly. So if they can adapt to that, great. This team could really go on a run. But with them being so young, with there being a lot of challenges and hurdles that they have to overcome, including 7 weeks away from the Coliseum, going to London, playing a very tough schedule. I mean, they have a lot of different things that are playing against them that's going to make it very, very difficult. But again, you're in the NFL. That's what you do. That's what you sign up for, and everybody's got to play. So that's what they're going to go do. I think this team is going to be a lot better. But with that being said, they were 4-12 in 2018, so I could totally see them improving in a couple wins here, a couple wins there, and it's like, okay, that's still not the season that Raider fans want to see, but you can see the team improving. And I think the biggest thing that we have to realize as Raider fans is John Gruden and Mike Mayock definitely wanted to lay the foundation down for the team. They wanted to build that foundation, and that's the one word that you must remember as a Raider fan in 2019 when you're watching the games. Who they drafted, who they brought in as free agents, for the most part, are all foundational pieces. They're going to build this team around the guys that basically they brought in the draft. The free agents, they're filling in voids. But the guys they brought in the draft are going to be foundational dudes, and they're going to build this team on them and around them. So you might not see exactly what you want to see right away, but you will see a much better team, a much more improved team, and a much more talented team. But it may not result in W's right away. And I know it's hard to say that as a fan and accept it, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable way to look at it. I completely understand that take. I think there's a lot of logic in that take. And here's the thing, though. I think I mostly agree with that take, but I also think that there is... Maybe it's only a small chance, but I think there's a chance that this team could be legitimately good. I think there's a chance that this team could fuck around and flirt with the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to be a Super Bowl team. I don't think there's much of a chance of that. I'm not saying they're even going to do anything when they get to the playoffs. I don't know there's much chance of that. But the way I look at this team, I have very high hopes for the offense. I have very low hopes for the defense. And so if both of those out, and live up to my hopes. What you're going to have is a team that puts a ton of points on the board, but also allows a ton of points to be put on the board, which will make for an exciting season. And also one of those seasons that could easily be a 4 to 5 game swap one way or the other, depending on how a few plays go. Because when it's that high scoring of a team on offense and allowing on defense, then you have those kinds of games where it's, whoever has the ball last wins, right? And whoever has the ball last could come down to 1 or 2 plays in the fourth quarter that change the decision, or change the outcome rather. It really looks like one of those teams where I think it's either going to be, like you said, on the field when you watch it, it'll be a better product, even though maybe in the stat sheet and the scoreboard and the win-loss column, it will not look much better. I think that's very possible. But I also think it's possible the Raiders ball out and have a very good season, and I think it's possible they look terrible and find themselves picking in the top 5 again. Like, it really does seem like anything is possible for this team.
Yeah, no, you're right. It could go any way. It really can. And look, I said everything that I said with the, kind of with the asterisk next to it. Like, this team does have potential to be really good. I think what you mentioned about it could end up being a shootout if the defense isn't up to par like it should be. Well, that's okay, because in 2016 we saw Derek Carr win a lot of those shootouts because he has, at least in his mind, regardless of what you think about Derek Carr as a quarterback, in his mind he feels like if he's given the opportunity late in the game, he could pull it out. That's something that every quarterback doesn't have. Every quarterback should have it, but Derek Carr does have it. We know that for a fact. I mean, he has made the Raiders come back and win games multiple times, plenty of times, record amount of times. So in his mind, if you give him the ball and you're down 6 or you're down 5 or you're in that striking range, he feels like he could win the game at any time. He kind of stops thinking and just lets it loose. He could do that. So if it comes down to a shootout, I feel really good about the Raiders' chances. The problem is if it doesn't come down to a shootout, if it's a blowout, or if the Raiders just can't stop anybody and the offense isn't clicking. I think the offense is going to click. I think Josh Jacobs is going to be a stud. I think obviously Antonio Brown, the addition to him, is going to be really, really good. I think he's got a lot to prove this season, even though he's going to have all his antics that he's going to do all season long. That's fine. As long as he goes out there and gets 100-plus catches, 1,200-plus yards, and 10-plus touchdowns, I'm fine. I don't care what kind of Instagram post he puts up or what he's talking about his helmet or what he's talking about his feet or I don't care. It really doesn't matter. His haircut, none of that matters to me as long as he goes out there and does what he does. I mean, a lot of people were so high on the Raiders getting him. I was very much against it when they first decided they wanted to go after him. But now that they got him, you might as well go use him. You already know what kind of talent he is. You might as well go out in there and ball out. Tyrell Williams, this could be a major year for him because of everything I just said about Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown is going to get a lot of attention, not only from a defensive back in his face, but he's going to have safety help over the top, meaning Tyrell Williams is going to have a lot of one-on-one coverage. All he's got to do is beat that coverage. All he's got to do is make a play. He could have an opportunity to have a really, really big season. I don't know what Darren Waller's going to do. I know he's big and athletic, but I don't know how consistent he is. So that's going to be a question mark. I know Hunter Renfrow is going to make the catch on 3rd and 8 when you need it. I know he will come through and catch the ball. It's just a matter of how long can he extend the drive? How long can the drive keep going? Are they going to get touchdowns and not field goals? That's one of the problems that they had in 2018. If you remember, they settled for a lot of field goals in the red zone instead of punching it into the end zone. You're not going to win in the 2019 NFL. You're not going to win in the style that the league is going. You're not going to win with just field goals. You have to cash in and get touchdowns. That's going to be the key. When you get to the red zone, can John Gruden dial up the right play to get you in the end zone? Or is he going to have to settle for a Daniel Carlson field goal? If you settle for field goals, you're going to settle for L's. So that's very, very important. It's not only on the players, it's on the coaching staff to get it done. And I'll tell you, I don't take a lot away from preseason games, and I don't remember which one it was, and I didn't talk about it, and I should have. I should have wrote it down at the time because sometimes I just forget things. But there was a preseason game, and I want to say it was maybe number 3. I think it was number 3. And it came down to like 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 3, and the Raiders couldn't pick it up, and they had to settle for field goals. You've got to be able to punch that in. You're at 1st and goal from the goal line. You've got to be able to say, like John Gruden used to when he coached the Raiders the first time, I'm not going to do anything tricky. I'm going to run the ball 1st and goal. I'm going to run it 4 times, and we're going to get in the end zone. And that's what he would do. Everybody in the stadium knew that the running back, Tyrone Wheatley, was going to get the ball. Charlie Garner was going to get the ball. Zach Crockett was going to get the ball. You knew damn well one of those cats was going to get the ball. And guess what? 9 times out of 10, you could not stop them. That's what I need to see. I need to see the Raiders say, I don't give a damn that you know what we're about to do. We're about to run right up the gut, right at you, and we're about to score a touchdown. When they can start doing that with consistency again, then they can start saying this team is on the way back where it needs to be. Until they can bully other teams on the offensive line and push the defensive line back, they're going to struggle. That's just what it is.
No doubt, and I think it's an interesting point to bring up about the whole field goals versus touchdowns, right? Very common platitude. Anyone who watches football knows the idea of trading field goals for touchdowns is how you lose, blah, 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 blah. But what's interesting about that, and you bringing it up, is because that was a major knock on John Gruden his first time around as a coach, right? He was a coach who was able to put up big-time numbers in terms of yards, in terms of first downs, in terms of all those kinds of stats. But many, Al Davis included, believe that he left too many points on the field, that when he got into the red zone, his play calling struggled a little bit, and he was settling for field goals instead of touchdowns far too often. That was a problem last year as well, and we talked about it on this podcast. I talked about the fact that John Gruden's red zone play calling was really, really bad early on. But I will say that we also talked on the podcast later in the season, it got a lot better. The Raiders got a lot better, and the play calling in the red zone got a lot better. So hopefully that continues to get better. Hopefully that's something that John Gruden learned about, or learned how to improve since his last stint as a coach. So hopefully that won't be an issue. But you bringing it up is really on point because, again, that was one of John Gruden's knocks, was that he knew how to move the football between the 20 and the 20, but didn't know how to move the football between the 20 and the end zone. And that was a problem. So hopefully that's a big switch because if it's not, that's going to be an issue because I think this defense is going to be better. I think it's going to show lots of reasons to believe that next year it will be a good defense. I also think it's a defense that is not going to, it's going to be a major issue if the offense can't put up points. This team is going to lose a lot of games if the offense can't score more than, 24 or 28 points in a game. So, and the key to doing that, again, is success in the red zone and not just settling for field goals. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about this team. I think there's a lot of reasons to temper your optimism and be worried about it, and a lot of reasons to understand that there are a lot of ways for this season to be a positive one, right? Obviously, they go 10 wins, they make the playoffs, positive season, everyone would agree. But I also think, as Q pointed out, there's a scenario where they go 7-9, 8-8, and it's still a positive because in that 7-9 or in that 8-8, they showed the beginnings of a team that's going to win 10 games next year, that's going to be in the playoffs next year. And I think that if we walk away from the season seeing that, it's another reason to be happy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, I'll give this example, and I've given this example before when I'm talking about these kind of scenarios. The Raiders are not used to winning. They won 4 games in 2018. They're not used to winning. They're not used to finishing games. A lot of times in 2018, we'd see what? Them get out to a good start and then not be able to finish games. Second half, it wouldn't be very good. John Gruden would get either conservative or the team would make mistakes. Somehow, ultimately, they'd lose the game, right? They have to learn how to win games. I kind of compare this to, and I don't know if you remember, when the Seattle Seahawks were on the come-up, the first year that they went to the playoffs and they had no business being there, I think that's the year that Marshawn Lynch had the Beastquake. Weren't they 7-9 when they made the playoffs? They were like a under 500 team, and they somehow squeaked their way into the playoffs, and they had no business being there. But it was kind of like the come-up. It was like, okay, this team is starting to show something. I think that was the year he had the Beastquake, and maybe they beat New Orleans in the playoffs. I'm not 100% sure. But either way, it's one of those years, and they were not 500. And I remember I was on the radio, and I kept saying, there's no reason this team is in the playoffs. You're not even a 500 team. But somehow they ended up with a wild card. Again, I don't remember exactly how the scenario shook out, but they found themselves in the playoffs. Well, that was the beginning of them turning the corner. And all of a sudden, they had another good draft. And all of a sudden, now they have a team that looks like something. And then they got a quarterback that's a winning quarterback. A guy that's got winning traits. And now all of a sudden, they're in the playoffs, they're going deep, and they're winning the Super Bowl. I just feel like this season for the Raiders could be one of those Seattle-esque type seasons where the record might not be as great as you want it to be as a fan, but you can see the team is starting to make strides and make moves and start to turn the corner. That season where the Raiders went 12-4, and I remember, James, that was an epic year for us on the podcast because it was like, oh my God, we're chronicling something that we've never even seen in years. It's been long. It was a long, long time. And so I remember that year was just so epic, but I never went into that season thinking the Raiders were going to go 12-4. I never thought that. I thought they were going to be a good team, but I didn't think 12-4. And then all of a sudden, one week, you get a victory. Another week, here's another victory. Oh, wow, by the way, you squeaked out a victory here. Next thing you know, we're looking at it, and we're like, man, this team's only lost 3 games all season. What the hell's going on? And so then I went from wanting the team to make the playoffs to, well, hell, they're on the streak like this, they might as well go to the Super Bowl because you can't guarantee that you're going to get back. And perfect example is Derek Carr goes down in 2016, Christmas Eve. I was there at the game, and all of a sudden the next season, 2017, you think, oh, well, they'll come back. They got beast mode now. Oh, they're going to take it over the top. And, well, we all know how that season shook out. And then 2018 sucked. And in 2019, we'll see how it goes. But you're never guaranteed that you're going to be that good the next year. So if they can put together a couple wins early, win a couple tough ones on the road, win a couple more, all of a sudden you'll look up, and they might have a record that you're like, damn, this is really good. And then you say, man, this team has really turned that corner. You just don't know. The potential's there because they have the talent. That's the one thing you can say about this team going into 2019. They have talent on the team. It's up to them to go and make plays. The defense, very young. Offense, pretty young. You know, there's a lot of guys that are young dudes. You're asking a lot out of a youngster, but you know they have the talent. They got winners on the squad. They got guys from Bama. They got guys from Clemson. And they got guys from Mississippi State. They got guys that are used to winning games. Now all they got to do is go out there and execute it. Oh, they got a guy from Michigan that only led the team in sacks last season. You know what I mean? Like, they got guys that are branded and taught and basically expect winning. Why should they do it? Why should it be any different on the next level? So, I mean, this season, like you mentioned, man, I just basically went through all that to say it's like you said. It can go from anywhere from really, really good to mediocre, and that's just kind of what it is this season. It's one of those big question marks we won't really know until we start to see it.
And now that we've hemmed and hawed and shown how it can go all kinds of different ways, it's time to get a little braver here, a little bit bolder, and actually make a prediction on what the Raiders are going to accomplish this year, what the record will be. And I will start off. During the offseason, I can't remember if it was before or after the draft. I think it was just after the draft. On Twitter, I made a prediction of them basically winning between 6 and 8 games. I said that was their range, 6 at worst, 8 at the most, but they're really not going much further out of that range. Since then, I've become a little bit more positive, not super positive, obviously, but a little more positive, and I'm going to go ahead and go with the 9 and 7. I sat down last night and I looked at the schedule, and my first go was a more pessimistic look at it. I was trying to be very realistic and harsh, and because I didn't want it to be a Homer fandom type thing. I didn't want to let my emotions as a Raiders fan who's excited for the season to start and excited for the team to do well, I didn't want that to impact me. So I tried to lean towards the negative, and I came away with 7 wins. And so then I went through again. I said, are there any of these that I should be flipping, that I'm being a little too harsh on the Raiders, or I'm maybe I'm being a little bit too pessimistic. And I flipped 2. One of them I think was a reasonable flip. The other one was probably me being a little bit a homer. And unfortunately, I can't remember which ones they were. I didn't take good notes when I did this. But that's where I landed. I landed at 9-7 for the season. I thought that was a nice. Not too optimistic, not too pessimistic, right in the middle, and very fair in my opinion. I think that's a very fair number. I think if the Raiders reach 9 and 7, it means a couple things. It means I think it's going to be a sign that they are headed in the right direction, that they've made progress, that they look good as a team, but they're not quite there yet. And I also think it is the result of a good offense and bad defense, and the wash being a just barely over 500 team. So that's what I'm going with my season prediction, 9 and 7. Q, what about you, man?
Well, it's funny, and you have great breakdown right there. I like that. First, before I get into that, I just want to verify that the Seahawks team I was talking about, that was the 2010 team. They went 7-9 in the regular season. They were actually first in the NFC West. That lets you know how bad the NFC West was. They won the division with a 7-9 record, and they beat the Saints in the playoffs. That was the beast mode run, and then they lost to the Bears the following week in the divisional playoffs. But anyway, that was 2010. 9 years later, they're still chomping at the bits as a really good team. So that's just one. I just wanted to back up my statement because I knew I wasn't crazy. I just didn't know exactly the details.
And to double down on that real quick, I'm confirming this right now. Yeah, that was the season the Raiders whooped the shit out of the Seahawks.
Yep.
Game, 2 or 3 of the season. Game 3, Raiders 33, Seahawks 3. Obviously, we know the direction the two franchises went since then, but that tells you something, right? Seahawks got their asses handed to them by the Raiders, and yet they were able to turn it around, make progress, and eventually a couple of years later they won the Super Bowl. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this season. Don't think that they have to be great in order for it to be a positive season. And with that, Q, my bad, go on with your thoughts.
No, you're good. You're good. I derailed it anyway, but I had to back that up because it was starting to bug the hell out of me. But anyway, back to what I think about the season. And look, I mean, I said when the schedule came out, I said they could easily go 4-12. They could easily go 8-8. I mean, really, because the schedule's not easy. It really isn't. You start the first two games at home, and then you're away from the Coliseum for 7 straight weeks, including a trip to London. That's not easy. And then you got the Vikings, you got the Bears, you got the Colts. Obviously, at that point, they had Andrew Luck. Now they don't. But still, I mean, you got some dogs on that schedule. You know, you got, especially at the front end. At the back end, it starts to ease up a little bit, in my opinion. But at the front end, man, the schedule is tough. You got the Packers. I mean, you're not playing no chumps. So, I mean, I looked at it and said, I can see them going 4-12 and still being a better team. They just got a lot of challenges in front of them. And I remember I was calling it adversity, and someone corrected me and said that adversity is something that you can't overcome. Challenges is something that you can overcome. So that's why I use the word challenges now, because their schedule is a challenge. Their road trips are challenges. The teams that they're playing, they're definitely challenges. They are something that can be overcame. So I correct myself on that. But with all that being said, I think that they're anywhere, and I'm not going to give a specific number, but I do believe that with what they've drafted, who they got, the mentality that they got, the coaches that they have on the staff, and I think Brenton Buckner is a guy that needs to get a lot of love, because I think that defensive line is going to be a lot better with him as their defensive line coach. I think they go anywhere from 6-10 to the number that you gave, 9-7. And I know that that's kind of a cop-out, but I feel like that's a reasonable range. And the reason I think that is because injuries happen, road trips are tough, 7 weeks away from the Coliseum. That's just tough. You know, I mean, it really, really is. And again, you had 13 sacks in 2018 from that defensive line. How much more pressure can you get on the quarterback in 2019? If you can get some good pressure on the quarterback, then some things could happen. Some good things can happen. If you don't get more pressure than you did in 2018, you're going to be in trouble, because guys like Patrick Mahomes, guys like Kirk Cousins, guys like Aaron Rodgers, even Mitchell Trubisky is going to pick you apart. Hell, Joe Flacco could pick you apart if you don't get no pressure on him. He's a statue back there, but he still knows how to sling the rock. So that's kind of my reasoning. I feel like if I had to pick a number, though, I would just cop out and go 8-8. I would just go with the old school 8-8 and say, you know what, that's going to be their record. I don't think that they're the worst. They're going to go from worst to first. I just don't think that that's in the cards for them this year. But everything that we've already said doesn't mean that they can't. It just means that I don't think that they will. But you never know. I just think that a lot of the teams in the AFC West particularly got better this season or this offseason. And so if the Raiders got better and the teams that they're facing got better, then it's going to be a tough uphill battle. But, again, it's not something I think they can't overcome.
All right, man, I like it. I think, again, very solid thought process. I'm in agreement with everything that's being said, and I think 8-8 is a super fair number to come to. And hopefully we are both horribly wrong, and the Raiders win double-digit games and we're in the playoffs. But, again, I think it's important at this point to recognize the fact that if one of our predictions comes true, the Raiders are either 8 or 8, 9, 7, there's a very good chance that at the end of the season we'll be on this podcast and we will be very positive about that 8, 9, 7, right? I just think it's really important to recognize the example that Q gave with the Seattle Seahawks, that it's frequently a stepping stone process. It doesn't often occur where it's out of nowhere like in 2016, and when it does come out of nowhere, a lot of times it's not long lasting, right? Remember that time the Browns won 10 games with Derek Anderson and went to the playoffs? Not long lasting. But when you see a team like the Seahawks build and win or improve by a couple games every season, that's the kind of building and progression that pays off more long term. So it's not a bad thing if the Raiders are only 500 or barely over 500. I would count that as a win, assuming, of course, it was a good, they look good on the field doing it. If they look like crap and they looked into it, that's a different question, obviously. All right, so we're going to move on, still talk about the season in general, but get a little fun with it. And I'm going to ask you, Q, to give us a bold prediction. It can be about the team as a whole. It can be about a coach. It can be about a player. It can be about a unit, whatever you want. I will lead with mine. And my bold prediction is that Derek Carr gets at least one MVP vote. Okay? I thought a lot about how I was going to pose this, right? Because you could say top X, top 5, top 10 quarterback, but how do you define that, right? Is that defined based on total yards? Is it defined by QBR? Is it defined by touchdown to interception ratio? How do you define what is a top 5, top 10, right? But in my mind, if you're a top 5 quarterback, you're going to get at least a look for the MVP. So what I'm saying is that Derek Carr is going to be a top 5 quarterback, and how I'm going to evaluate that, whether he is top 5 or not, is whether or not he gets an MVP vote. Because again, this is the league where the MVP almost every single season is going to be a quarterback. And so if you're a top 5 quarterback, you're going to be considered as a potential MVP candidate. And that's what I'm saying, is that Derek Carr this season is going to put up numbers. Okay? He's in his second year with John Gruden's offense. You've heard on Hard Knocks how he's talking about how things are becoming more clear and obvious to him now that he's in his second year. And he has weapons like he has never had before. All right? Darren Waller is a bit of a question. Sure, absolutely. But if most of the reports are true and he's a matchup nightmare, that's huge. Okay? And then you've got Antonio Brown, one of the best receivers to have ever played for the Raiders. And this is an organization that had Tim Brown, Jerry Rice, and yet he is still one of the greatest who have ever played for this organization. Fred Biletnikoff, doesn't matter. Still one of the best ever to have played. Okay? You match him up with Tyrell Williams, the best duo we've had since Jerry Rice and Tim Brown. Okay? You've got Josh Jacobs, who is a perfect fit for this offense. A perfect fit for this offense. So I really believe that Derek Carr is going to have a huge year. I mean, last year he threw for more yards than he ever has in his career. Right? It was a bad season. There are a lot of struggles. But that showed that in this offense, he can make things happen. Now he has better weapons and a year of learning and understanding this offense under his belt. I think he's going to break out. I think he's going to have a huge year. I think we're going to see a year that's closer to 2016 than any other year in his career. And I think he's going to be one of those names that's talked about, and he's going to get at least one MVP vote.
Wow, that is bold. And you'll get the MVP votes, and he'll get the MVP votes if he wins games. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about winning games. No matter how many yards he puts up, no matter how much the stats are, no matter how good he looks, if they win a lot of games and they're contending even for the wild card, then he'll get an MVP vote. So I can see that happening, but they got to be able to win, and they got to be able to contend, at least be in the wild card hunt. So that'll be that's my little asterisk on that statement right there. Not saying that it's not possible. For my one bold statement, I believe, and this is going to be really bold, this is going to be absolutely really, really monstrous bold, and man, this is tough. This is a tough one.
Wow, I thought I was being bold. Damn.
No, I want to go there, but then I'm not 100% sure. So I'm just going to go ahead and ride, and I've said this before, but I'm going to ride with the fact that Josh Jacobs is going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. How about that? Offensive Rookie of the Year will be Josh Jacobs. It's not really that bold because I've said it before, but I feel very confident that he's going to be used so much that he will be that guy. He'll be the guy that really steps up and has a major role with the Raiders and helps out in this John Gruden offense and really helps them get where they need to be, have that controlled West Coast style, but also have the big playability at the same time. Between him and Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington, I think they'll have a chance to run out the clock a few times like John Gruden likes to do, bleed the clock out late in games, and really have a big impact on the team. So I'm going to ride with Josh Jacobs. I've been riding with him before he was drafted. I liked him a lot, thought he could be a major factor, and I'm just going to say that he's going to be the Offensive Rookie of the Year for the Oakland Raiders.
I like it. I'm into it. Definitely one that I can roll with. I've been saying for a while, I think Josh Jacobs is going to be huge for the Raiders. I just said I thought he was perfect for this offense, so I'm with it. But Q, I got to ask, man. I got to know now. We went through all that drama. What were you going to say? What was going to be the crazy bold one you weren't sure about?
Well, I was going to say that the Offensive Rookie of the Year and the Defensive Rookie of the Year were going to play for the Raiders.
Woo!
Yeah, that would have been super bold, and that's expecting Cleve Farrell to step up and be like a super stud. And then I thought, well, it could be Cleve Farrell, or it could be a guy like Trayvon Mullen. A guy who I think is going to get a lot more play than people think is going to happen. I'm really, really high.
Or Jonathan Abram.
Or it could be Jonathan Abram, but I just don't know if he's going to be that dude from the safety position, but he could.
Yeah.
It really could be him if he comes up with some interceptions and also is just a dog out there. It could be a guy like him. So there's a chance that it could happen. I think my biggest hesitation was I didn't know exactly who to name. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know exactly what guy it was going to be. Like, I knew it was going to be, or I feel like it's going to be Josh Jacobs, no doubt about it, offensively. But defensively, I mean, there's options, like you just mentioned. It could be Jonathan Abram. It could be Trayvon Mullen. It could be Cleve Farrell. I don't think it's going to be Max Crosby because I don't think he's going to get enough burn. But, it could be a lot of different guys. It could be... Hell, it could be Keyshawn Nixon. He might get out there and get a lot of play. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of options because that defense is really, really young. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead because you talked me into it, and you didn't really talk me into it. You just made me bring it up. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the Offensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year both play in Oakland in 2019.
That's what's up. I like it. We went there. Some big, bold prediction coming through. And, yeah, I mean, now that you went that with the double, that outbolds mine. That's a bigger prediction than mine. And I thought I was going balls to the wall with mine. So there you have it, Raider Nation. 2 really big and bold predictions from Black Hole Banter on the Raiders this year. And if either or both of them come true, I think we're all going to be pretty damn happy with how this season went. So that's dope. And so now let's narrow it down a little bit. We're talking about the season as a whole. But on Monday is Game 1. And so we got to preview Game 1 a little bit. They're going to be taking on the division rival Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football. Very exciting way to start the season. And in part, exciting because of the fact that, well, it's, a division rival and it's Monday Night Football. But also in part because it's a very winnable game. The Denver Broncos are not a very good team. I think that they believe they've improved a lot, and I think they've improved a little bit. But they're still going to be a team that's battling to not be last place in the West, just like the Raiders are going to be a team battling to not be last place in the West. So I think it's a very winnable game. I think it's a game that can set the momentum and tempo for the rest of the season. I think it's a game that if the Raiders really do want to look at playoffs, they've got to win. They've got to show right away that they can compete with a team like Denver who's just not that good. So I think it's going to be a really exciting game, and I think it's going to come down to entirely almost the offensive line for the Raiders. Q already talked about how important this is. But is Von Miller going to single-handedly disrupt this game? Is he going to be able to take it over and single-handedly stop drives by the Raiders? Or was paying Trent Brown to be one of the highest-paid right tackles in the history of the game worth it? Is he going to go out there and shut down Von Miller and give Derek Carr the time he needs to survey the field? Because if so, I think the Raiders come away with the win. So for me, that's the biggest thing that I want to look at is that battle between the pass rush of Denver and the offensive line of the Raiders that on paper seems like it should be a positive for the team. Obviously, there's some injuries right now making it iffy, but you would think that Trent Brown would be a positive. You would think that Rodney Hudson is a positive. But remember, it's still Tom Cable as the coach, and it's still him, running a scheme that I don't think suits the best attributes of these players. So I think there's a lot of questions with the offensive line. They've got a big test on Monday Night Football, and whether or not they can win that test is going to determine whether or not the Raiders can win that game.
You're right. Absolutely right. I mean, a lot's going to be determined by what goes on in the trenches on Monday night. I do think that the offensive line is going to step up, and it's crazy because Colton Miller actually had pretty good success against the Broncos himself when he was a rookie, until he got injured. But that first game against the Broncos, he did pretty well. The offensive line did okay. I think Trent Brown's going to be a major upgrade. Obviously, Rodney Hudson's still the dude over there at the center position. Obviously, the 2 guard spots are going to be question marks because they got guys that aren't the regular starters going to be filling in there. So that'll be a question mark. But, it's the Raiders in Denver at the Coliseum for potentially the last time ever. And I just feel like it was in 2018 when it was Christmas Eve and it was the Raiders and the Broncos at the Coliseum for the last time ever, as everyone thought. and the Raiders went out there and handled their business, and it was just so electric, I don't see the Broncos going into the Coliseum and winning that game. I just don't. I do think they're going to be tough. I think Vic Fangio is going to be a hell of a head coach. I think he's going to have them fired up, ready to rock and roll and go, but he's still a first-time head coach. As long as he's been in the league, he's still a first-time head coach. He's a really good defensive coordinator, but that doesn't mean that he knows what's going on the offensive side of the ball. Joe Flacco is a statue back there. He'll give you an opportunity to intercept the ball 1 or 2 times a game. Oh, by the way, he's, I think, 0-2 against the Raiders. And he doesn't have a winning record against the Raiders. I know that for a fact. I know the Ravens beat them last year, but it was Lamar Jackson and crew that did that. It wasn't Joe Flacco. So I don't think that Joe Flacco has a winning record against the Ravens or against the Raiders. He's just not that good, in my opinion. But, we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. But if I'm a betting man, and I'm not, but if I was, I would say that the Raiders win that game solely because it's at the Oakland Coliseum, and it'll be the last time the Broncos enter the Coliseum versus the Raiders. And I just think that electric atmosphere, it's Monday Night Football. You know what I mean? It's just a different animal. And I think that the old school Raider mentality comes out when they used to be the kings of Monday night. I think you start to see that starting this Monday night against the Broncos in 2019.
All right, that's what's up. So you're calling it a win for the Raiders?
Yeah, no doubt about it.
All right, man, I'm doubling down. I'm also going to predict a win for the Raiders. If you guys remember last year, they started out game 1 against the Rams, and most people didn't expect the Raiders to be even competitive after trading Khalil Mack, and they went punch for punch, and they really came very close to winning that game. The first 4 weeks I thought were very solid before things started to tumble and go downhill. And so I think they come out strong again. I think they start strong, but I think this season they're able to actually lock down a win or two in the first 4 games, and kind of, again, maybe not go gangbusters and be really great this season, but start to show that they've learned how to finish, that they've learned how to fix some of the issues that were preventing them from getting wins last year. And so I think they come out in week 1 and they get a pretty solid win. I'm not going to say it's a blowout or anything like that, but I think that we will see Derek Carr in the victory formation. I think it'll be, enough of a win that's how this thing comes to an end is with the Raiders taking a knee because there's no need to do anything else. The game is in hand and they're able to walk away with it. So, I'm excited about it. It's going to be a really fun game to watch. I think it's going to be super competitive. And again, I think both of us are now saying, making it official. We're predicting that the Raiders come away with the win over the Broncos in week 1. And no matter what happens, win, lose, or tie, Black Hill Banter is going to be here to talk about it. So till then, Raider Nation, peace out and enjoy week 1.
Yeah, exactly what he said.
It's a way of life. Raider Nation.
Up top, down low, it one way. That's through the black hole. Game time, talk is dead. Just win, baby. Enough said. Up top, down low. Only one way, that's through the black hole. Game time, talk is dead. Just win, baby.